Göbekli Tepe Underlayers. Beneath the excavated rings of Göbekli Tepe, already the oldest known temple complex on Earth, lies something far more unsettling. Ground-penetrating radar has shown deeper circular structures, chambers, and stone arrangements buried intentionally under layers of compacted soil. Archaeologists rarely mention this because it rewrites human history completely. These underlayers appear thousands of years older than the site itself. If true, then the story of civilization does not begin with agriculture, it begins with an unknown culture capable of constructing megalithic sanctuaries during the Ice Age. The first hints surfaced in the early 2010s when radar scans revealed perfectly geometric anomalies beneath Enclosure D. These weren't natural formations, they were carved, planned, aligned. The deeper scans went, the older the layers appeared. Some researchers estimated them at 14,000 to 16,000 years old, a time when mainstream history insists humans were scattered nomads without architecture, engineering, or symbolic planning. When early researchers proposed publishing this data, permissions were abruptly revoked. Access to deeper excavation zones was denied. The official reasoning was preservation, but those who worked on site whispered a different story. Someone didn't want these layers touched. Workers described seeing stone pillars still standing, untouched for millennia, yet older and rougher than the refined T-pillars above. They spoke of wide ceremonial floors, thick with dust, suggesting a far earlier occupation. And then, just as quickly, those workers disappeared from public interviews. Funding was cut. New researchers were rotated in, the narrative was reset. Göbekli Tepe is 12,000 years old, nothing more. What terrifies institutions is simple. If Göbekli Tepe's deeper underlayers are real, then our ancestors possessed knowledge long before agriculture, metallurgy, or writing. This would mean the first cities didn't spark religion. Religion may have sparked the first cities. Civilization didn't teach humans to build monuments. Monument builders may have carried knowledge across a forgotten epoch, surviving a catastrophe that wiped out their world and forced them to seed a new one. What humanity lost is almost unimaginable, the blueprint of how civilization truly began. A timeline erased, a people forgotten, and a chapter of human origin deliberately sealed under stone. And the deeper we dig, the more obvious it becomes that someone, long ago or today, never wanted us to uncover what came before. The Yonaguni Pyramid. Off the coast of Yonaguni Island in Japan lies a structure that should not exist. Massive terraces, razor-sharp angles, perfectly carved staircases, and monolithic platforms rise from the seafloor as if an entire city sank overnight. Divers describe it as entering the ruins of a lost world. A world far older than any known civilization. Geological dating places the formation at 14,000 years old, a time when Japan was still connected to the Asian mainland, and no human society is supposed to have had the capability to cut, shape, transport, or align megalithic stone. The controversy began the moment researchers released the first underwater footage. The formations were too precise, too geometric, a five-tiered pyramid. A grand staircase, a rectangular hall, perfectly parallel walls. It looked unmistakably man-made, but the moment the first academic paper argued this possibility, pushback erupted. Universities threatened funding cuts. Marine archaeologists were discouraged from returning, and suddenly, the narrative shifted. It's natural, just erosion. Yet the divers who mapped the site, the engineers who modeled the angles, and the geologists who sampled the cuts all privately agreed, erosion does not create parallel staircases with 90-degree corners. Local fishermen spoke of stone tools found wedged between the steps before officials seized them. One diver claimed he saw carved symbols along the upper terrace before they were removed by unknown teams days later. No one explained who recovered them or where they were taken. Even the Japanese government imposed quiet restrictions on expeditions, citing safety concerns, despite decades of trouble-free dives. The greatest threat posed by the Yonaguni Pyramid is what it implies. A lost coastal civilization flourishing at the end of the Ice Age, long before the rise of Egypt or Sumer, a society capable of shaping megaliths, coordinating large-scale construction, and aligning structures with celestial markers, all at a time when mainstream history insists humanity was still primitive. If Yonaguni is real, then the entire story of human advancement collapses. The ladder of progress becomes a cycle. Civilizations rise, fall, and are wiped clean by rising seas, leaving only the faintest stone footprints beneath the waves. And the tragedy is this: the ocean may be hiding the oldest city on Earth, and instead of uncovering it, the world has chosen to look away, because acknowledging it would force us to rewrite everything we think we know. The Lake Titicaca Foundations. High in the Andes, 12,500 feet above sea level, Lake Titicaca holds something older than the lake itself. Beneath the freezing waters lie cyclopean stone platforms, megalithic causeways, and the foundations of what appears to be an ancient harbor, impossibly old, impossibly advanced, and aligned to a shoreline that existed before the end of the Ice Age. When sonar scans first revealed these submerged structures in the early 2000s, researchers quietly admitted something astonishing: these stones were engineered at a time when the lake was drastically lower, long before humans were supposed to build anything at this altitude. The story became stranger when divers descended into the dark blue depths and found cut andesitium blocks, perfectly carved channels, and platform stones weighing several tons. They discovered staircases leading to nowhere, as if once connected to buildings now swallowed by time. Some blocks carried geometric inscriptions, rectangular notches identical to the stonework at Pumapunku, itself a site so precise it challenges modern machining. But the most disturbing discovery was a row of foundation stones arranged in a pattern suggesting a port complex, in a place where no ancient city is recorded. The implications were devastating for the official narrative. To build such structures requires labor specialization, engineering knowledge, and a stable society. Attributes mainstream archaeology claims did not exist in the Andes until thousands of years later. Yet the lake's changing water levels place these megaliths at an age of 14,000 to 18,000 years, a period when the region's inhabitants were supposed to be simple hunter-gatherers. When early findings were prepared for publication, the project abruptly stalled, funding vanished. Government permits were withdrawn. Some of the deepest scans were classified under the justification of environmental protection. The lead Bolivian researcher who publicly suggested a pre-flood civilization soon found his university's support cut and his access to the lake revoked. Even the diver footage that leaked online was dismissed instantly as misinterpretation. Despite showing cut stones impossible to form naturally, what these foundations represented was nothing less than a vanished high-altitude civilization capable of engineering on a monumental scale. Their world drowned slowly as glacial meltwater filled the basin, erasing their cities, their monuments, and their entire story. And humanity lost the chance to understand a civilization that may have stood at the roof of the world long before history began, one whose knowledge was submerged, silenced, and buried under a mirror of blue water that still hides their truth. The Amazon Geoglyph Network. Deep beneath the canopy of the western Amazon lies a geometric network older than any pyramid or temple on Earth. Circles, squares, roads, and fortress-like earthworks carved into the soil long before the rainforest grew over them. Satellite images first revealed the shapes in the early 2000s, but once researchers began clearing small portions for study, a terrifying realization emerged: these structures predate the forest itself. In other words, a sophisticated human culture engineered the Amazon basin thousands of years before civilization officially existed, and its memory was swallowed by the jungle. The geoglyphs are colossal, some stretching over 300 meters across, with precision that requires surveying tools, coordinated labor, and a level of planning far beyond what hunter-gatherers were thought capable of. Wide straight roads connect the shapes with mathematical accuracy. Certain circles align with solstice points. Others mirror distant earthworks hundreds of kilometers away. The soil in the trenches shows signs of repeated burning, sculpting, and reinforcement, suggesting long-term occupation rather than ritual markings. But the most unsettling discovery came from carbon dating the sediments. Many structures are older than 10,000 years, and some layers push closer to 12,000 to 13,000 years, putting them at the end of the Ice Age, an era supposedly devoid of complex societies in the Americas. The implications annihilated the academic timeline. If true, giant settlements existed in the Amazon long before Egypt, Sumer, or the Indus Valley. Once these dates leaked, restrictions followed. Entire research zones were placed off-limits for conservation. Universities withdrew grants. Government agencies refused excavation permits. A Brazilian archaeologist who publicly suggested a pre-agricultural civilization saw her lab funding evaporate within months. Drone footage captured straight-line causeways deep in restricted regions, only to be wiped from official archives days later. Indigenous groups spoke of ancient grid cities built before the forest grew, but their testimony was ignored. The threat was obvious. If the Amazon once supported organized cities with advanced earth engineering, then the story of human development in the Americas collapses. It means knowledge was widespread, sophisticated, and ancient, far older than the Clovis first model taught for decades. It means humanity forgot an entire era of flourishing civilizations erased by catastrophic climate shifts and time. And the tragedy is profound. The rainforest may be hiding the largest network of ancient structures on Earth, yet the world refuses to uncover them. We lost a civilization that mastered the land before the jungle reclaimed it, its geometry buried, its memory stolen, its brilliance left to rot beneath roots and vines. The Giza Subterranean Labyrinth. Beneath the sands of Giza, below the pyramids, below the Sphinx, below the ceremonial causeways, lies a labyrinth so old, so vast, and so deliberately hidden that even mentioning it in academic circles can end careers. Ancient texts spoke of it plainly, a measured passage of thousands of halls, a world below the world, built long before the reign of the pharaohs. But when explorers rediscovered parts of this labyrinth in the late 1800s, the reaction was not excitement. It was silence. The first modern record comes from British archaeologist W. M. Flinders Petrie, who mapped deep shafts near the Sphinx and reported unfathomable tunnels. Local workers told him the passages led to entire chambers carved far beneath the plateau, some filled with water, others with sealed stone doors. But Petrie's deeper recordings vanished from his archives, and the official report minimized what he found. Still, whispers reached European newspapers, a hidden city under Giza. In the 1930s, a team sponsored by the Egyptian Antiquities Service entered newly uncovered shafts near the Sphinx's right paw. They found rooms cut with impossible precision, floors polished like mirrors, and walls showing erosion marks older than any pharaonic structure above them. One chamber contained a massive stone coffer older than the Great Pyramid by thousands of years. Their findings were never published. The expedition was abruptly terminated. Access to those shafts was sealed with iron gates that remain locked today. In 2009, independent researchers used ground-penetrating radar around the Sphinx and discovered enormous anomalies, rectangular voids, deep corridors, and multiple stacked levels stretching from the Great Pyramid to the Khafre Causeway. The data was undeniable, but within weeks, permits were revoked, equipment confiscated, and officials declared the results misinterpreted. No further scans were allowed. The threat of this labyrinth is simple: it predates the pyramids. Its erosion patterns suggest a construction age of 10,000 to 12,000 years, aligning with periods of intense rainfall that ended long before dynastic Egypt existed. That means a civilization, older, more advanced, and entirely forgotten, engineered the foundations upon which later Egyptians built. It means the pyramids were additions, not origins. What humanity lost beneath Giza is not just architecture. It is our true starting point. A chapter of history carved in stone, hidden beneath sand, locked away because it destabilizes the carefully curated timeline. A subterranean world older than civilization, sealed in darkness, so the story above can remain intact. The Malta Hypogeum Chambers. Deep under the small island of Malta lies a structure that should not exist in the Neolithic timeline, the Hal Saflieni Hypogeum, a three-level subterranean complex carved with surgical precision into solid limestone. But what most people never hear about is that the publicly accessible chambers represent only a fraction of what once existed. Beneath the official tourist routes, beneath the gated corridors, beneath the sealed passageways lie older, deeper, undocumented levels that researchers are forbidden to explore. These hidden chambers are not simply ancient, they appear older than civilization itself, built by a people whose identity has been erased so thoroughly that only their stonework remains. The first sign that something was being concealed emerged in 1902, when workers widening a cistern accidentally broke through the ceiling of the Hypogeum. They found skulls, elongated, unusual, and disturbingly consistent, and chambers echoing with perfect acoustic resonance. Early excavators described corridors narrowing into darkness, shafts plunging deeper than their lantern light could reach, and doorways leading to rooms beyond measure. Yet within 2 years, many of the deeper passages were sealed, the skulls quietly removed, and the excavation reports rewritten to present the site as a simple Neolithic tomb. But testimonies remained. In the 1920s, school children on an official tour vanished after wandering down an unguarded corridor. Their teacher claimed she heard cries echoing from below as if from a great distance. Authorities denied the incident ever occurred, then locked that section permanently. In the 1960s, a team of researchers attempting to document the lower labyrinth discovered perfectly carved red ochre spirals stretching along a passageway so ancient its walls bore water erosion marks inconsistent with Malta's climate for the last 10,000 years. Their findings were confiscated, their access revoked, the tunnels sealed again. What terrified institutions was the engineering. The resonance chamber, known as the Oracle Room, amplifies sound at frequencies affecting the human nervous system. The geometry suggests acoustic science far beyond Neolithic understanding. Deeper rooms contain precision-cut blocks that resemble the earliest megalithic architecture found anywhere on Earth, and the radiocarbon dates from the lowest strata hint at ages pushing up against 10,500 to 12,000 years, long before Malta was inhabited according to mainstream archaeology. The story hidden beneath Malta challenges the entire structure of human history. It suggests a forgotten Mediterranean culture, technologically adept, acoustically advanced, and capable of constructing subterranean complexes rivaling modern engineering, existed before the rise of agriculture, before the first cities, before the known world began. But instead of rewriting the story, the world buried it. The deepest levels are locked behind iron doors. Exploration requests are denied. The elongated skulls vanished, and humanity lost something irreplaceable, evidence of a civilization too old, too advanced, and too inconvenient for the official timeline. A world beneath an island, a history beneath history, a silence maintained because the truth beneath Malta is older and more dangerous than we were ever allowed to know. The Baalbek Megablocks Pit at Baalbek in Lebanon stands one of humanity's greatest architectural puzzles. The trilithon, 3 stone blocks weighing over 800 tons each, fitted with machine-like precision into a platform so massive that even modern cranes would struggle to lift a single piece. But the real mystery is not the visible ruins. It is what lies beneath them. The Megablocks Pit, a quarry recess holding stones so immense they seem carved for giants, and so ancient that the Romans, long credited with building Baalbek, never even attempted to move them. The deeper archaeologists dug, the older, heavier, and more inexplicable the stones became. The first shock came when excavation teams in the 1990s uncovered the stone of the pregnant woman, a 1,000-ton block left partially buried in a sloped pit. It was dismissed as an abandoned project until 2014, when researchers discovered an even larger stone beneath it, weighing over 1,650 tons, perfectly squared and polished as if prepared for installation, and further drilling showed yet another layer of worked stone below that one, suggesting that Baalbek's true foundation might be far older than the Roman temple built atop it. Geological weathering patterns on these lower stones indicate extreme age, far beyond the 2,000-year-old Roman period. Some researchers estimate 9,000 to 12,000 years, aligning with the era of other megalithic anomalies around the world. This raised an uncomfortable question: who carved and planned these monstrous blocks, and for what purpose? The moment the age debate surfaced, restrictions followed. The lower quarry was fenced off. Independent researchers received cease orders. A German team attempting to publish a paper on the pre-Roman strata was pressured into reclassifying the blocks as Roman era but unused, a statement they quietly contradicted in private interviews. Even local workers claimed that earlier tunnel excavations beneath the main platform revealed interlocking megaliths far older than anything above, which were quickly sealed after officials inspected them. The threat Baalbek posed was enormous. If these stones predate known civilizations, then an advanced culture once operated in Lebanon during the late Ice Age, capable of quarrying, transporting, and positioning multi-thousand-ton megaliths with techniques we still cannot replicate. This would mean they possessed knowledge, mechanical, logistical, mathematical, that modern engineering struggles to match, and it would force historians to admit that history's timeline is not a line at all, but a fractured record with entire chapters torn out. Instead, Baalbek's deepest secrets were buried, access denied, studies suppressed. The oldest stones in the world were left half-hidden in a pit too heavy to erase, too ancient to acknowledge. And humanity lost the truth, a memory of builders whose mastery of stone remains unmatched, a civilization whose achievements stand partially revealed yet officially denied, because accepting them would shatter the very foundation of our historical story. The Karahan Tepe Sun Tunnels. On a windswept plateau of southeastern Turkey, older and more enigmatic than Göbekli Tepe itself, lie the ruins of Karahan Tepe, a site that has quietly become the most dangerous archaeological discovery of the last century. What the public sees today is only a fragment: stone pillars, carved heads, ritual pits. But what is almost never discussed is the network of subsurface sun tunnels, narrow passages, hidden chambers, and precisely aligned shafts carved deep into bedrock, engineered to capture, channel, and manipulate sunlight in ways that defy every assumption about prehistoric humans. These tunnels were first noticed when researchers exploring a carved pit saw a beam of light perfectly strike a stone face at sunrise. Only on one specific day of the year, further investigation revealed slits in the rock that directed sunlight through zigzagging channels into deeper chambers with no direct sky access. These alignments required astronomical knowledge, advanced geometry, and architectural planning thousands of years before the invention of writing or mathematics, according to mainstream timelines. But the real shock came when ground-penetrating radar revealed long linear voids beneath the plateau, multiple tunnels radiating outward like spokes of a wheel, some stretching over 40 meters. Their depth and precision were impossible for simple tools. Their purpose suggested an advanced ritual or observational system, perhaps a solar calendar, perhaps something more complex. When early reports hinted the tunnels could predate Göbekli Tepe by centuries or even millennia, everything changed. Government officials rapidly restricted access. Independent researchers were pushed off the site. Radar data disappeared into private archives. A documentary crew filming unauthorized footage of a deep tunnel was detained and their equipment confiscated. Excavation on the lower levels abruptly stopped, officially due to stability concerns, yet workers reported that deeper chambers had already been partially opened, that they saw smooth walls, polished niches, and carved stone motifs, unlike anything above ground. What terrified institutions was the implication that Karahan Tepe could be the true origin point of the megalithic builders. A civilization already fully developed at the end of the Ice Age, capable of engineering underground complexes aligned to the heavens. A culture with continuity planning, and scientific understanding long before agriculture, cities, or recorded history. If accepted, it would rewrite the entire story of human evolution, placing the cradle of civilization thousands of years earlier. But the tunnels remain sealed. The deepest chambers stay unexcavated. What humanity lost is immeasurable. The blueprints of the world's earliest astronomers, engineers, and ritual scientists, builders who mastered stone and sunlight in a forgotten age, whose legacy was buried because it threatened the fragile foundations of the modern historical timeline. A civilization older than history, a technology older than civilization, a truth entombed in darkness under the Turkish hills. The Kimberley Wandjina Caves. Hidden in the remote wilderness of Western Australia lie the Wandjina Caves, painted chambers so ancient that even the oldest Aboriginal oral traditions describe them not as creations, but as inheritances. The Wandjina figures, large, ghostly beings with round faces, featureless eyes, and radiant halos, have long been celebrated as part of Australia's sacred heritage. But what almost no one discusses is the age of the caves themselves. Beneath the visible artwork, beneath the top layer of pigment, lie older paintings, older carvings, older markings etched into stone tens of thousands of years before the earliest known civilizations rose. The first clue came in the 1950s, when a team studying pigment layers accidentally exposed an underpainting far older than the Wandjina style. Instead of publishing the results, the findings were abruptly sealed. The official explanation was cultural sensitivity, but internal memos revealed something more unsettling. The deeper layers suggested an artistic tradition possibly 60,000 years old, older than the last glacial maximum, older than Göbekli Tepe, older than human settlements anywhere else on Earth. These markings weren't random. They formed patterns, grids, and symbols that seemed purposeful, mathematical, and recurring across dozens of caves. In the 1990s, a small group of researchers used portable spectrometers to analyze mineral accretion over the carvings. Their dating estimates were catastrophic for the academic timeline. Some layers appeared as old as 70 to 80,000 years. Overnight, their grant was revoked. Their equipment was confiscated for alleged permit violations. They were barred from returning to the region. It was as if acknowledging the true age of the caves would unravel every accepted story of human development. Local indigenous elders spoke carefully around the subject, saying only that the caves were given, not made, and that the knowledge of the earliest artists had been lost before remembered time. Some elders described deeper chambers within the caves, sealed after a government survey team explored them in the 1970s. Those survey documents have never been released. When journalists attempted to investigate, they were told access was restricted for cultural protection, yet those same restricted zones were heavily monitored by non-indigenous authorities, with no clear explanation. What terrified institutions was simple. If the Kimberley Caves truly contain artwork predating every known civilization, then human cognition, symbolic reasoning, and cultural development began far earlier than science is willing to admit. It would mean advanced artistic expression flourished before agriculture, before settled life, before the accepted march of human progress. But instead of embracing this revelation, the world buried it under layers of bureaucracy, sealed chambers, and silence, and humanity lost the truth. Evidence of a creative, intelligent, symbol-making culture older than civilization, older perhaps than any human story we have ever told. A window into a forgotten world locked in stone, hidden because its age is too ancient, too disruptive, too impossible to allow. The Antarctica Dry Valley Ruins. In the frozen heart of Antarctica, shielded by perpetual ice and winds that scour the land clean of life, lies a place that should not exist. The McMurdo Dry Valleys. Unlike the rest of the continent, these valleys are bare, no snow, no ice, no vegetation. What few people know is that beneath the gravel and permafrost, early 20th century explorers reported stone blocks, angular formations, and geometric patterns that appeared unmistakably artificial. Their accounts were dismissed as hallucinations brought on by exhaustion until modern satellite scans suggested they were telling the truth. The first unsettling discovery came from the British Terra Nova expedition in 1911. Several members recorded finding worked stones, steps carved into basalt, and a rectangular trench partially filled with ice. Their notes were quietly filed away, never included in the official publication. Nearly half a century later, during the Cold War, U.S. Navy aerial surveys photographed strange rectilinear shadows beneath the valley floors. Those images were marked classified. Even today, the highest resolution data of the dry valleys remains withheld under national security exemptions. In the 1990s, ground-penetrating radar teams, ostensibly searching for meteorological markers, detected subsurface anomalies arranged in straight lines, some spanning nearly 200 meters. The radar reflections resembled buried walls, platforms, and intersecting corridors. When a small team attempted to drill near one anomaly, their operation was immediately halted by military personnel citing environmental protocols. The equipment was seized. The zone was declared off-limits. No scientific explanation was ever provided. What makes the dry valleys so dangerous to the historical timeline is their age. Geological studies show these valleys have remained ice-free for at least 2 million years. A staggering span of time untouched by glaciation. This means that if any human-made structures exist beneath the surface, they predate not just civilization, but humanity itself. That implication is unacceptable to mainstream science. Accepting it would imply a lost epoch, a forgotten culture, or a chapter of Earth's story erased long before Homo sapiens emerged. And yet the evidence persists. Satellite images show suspiciously straight ridges and perfectly aligned rectangular depressions. Thermal scans reveal heat signatures inconsistent with natural rock layers. Recent scientific teams have reported polygonal structures of unknown origin, claims quietly edited out of final reports. Access to certain valleys requires joint approval from multiple governments, and those approvals almost never come. What humanity lost in Antarctica is not merely historical context, it is the possibility that Earth has lived many lives, many civilizations, many cycles. The dry valleys may hold the oldest ruins on the planet, a record of a world forgotten by time and buried by ice. But until the permissions are lifted, until the anomalies are excavated, the truth remains entombed in silence, protected not by nature, but by human hands. A final reminder echoes through all 10 mysteries. History is not missing pieces. Those pieces have been deliberately removed.